So I figured that it's about time that I give an update on what's happening in South Africa at the moment from what I can see. This is following from the videos I did on land expropriation without compensation. So on the ground, what I have seen that's been changing is that protests have been happening more frequently. Often the protests do include things like burning tires and things like that. There have been some that have been violent, where people lost their lives, where there was shooting happening between police and protesters. And something that seems to be happening in at least some of the protests is that people start looting local shops and things like that. So there's a lot of anger that's coming to a boil, at least in this province. Another thing that I've been seeing more stories about is xenophobic attacks against people who are from other African countries like Nigeria or Malawi or Zimbabwe. A lot of the violence against them, or the protests against those foreigners, is that they are being given jobs that South Africans should be getting, because the unemployment rate here is very high. And South Africa is actually quite a popular country for refugees from other African countries to come to. So there are quite a few people here who've come seeking shelter and safety, and now they are being attacked in some cases. And this is not actually new. It has been happening for a few years already. It is now just kind of rearing its head again, given the climate of how people are feeling at the moment. So what I see is part of, at least, driving all of this increase in violence and protests and things like that, is that whereas before last year, let's say, the people who are living in poverty, who are living in bad conditions, who are born into a life that they realistically have no chance of supporting themselves out of and creating a better future for themselves, there was no particular one thing that they were blaming for the state of their lives. It wasn't like, oh, I have this bad life because of the government, or because of white people, or because of my parents. It's just, there are so many people living in poverty. This is just my lot in life. That doesn't, however, change the anger and disappointment and disempowerment that comes with that kind of life. So all of that is still there under the surface. It's just undirected. There's not really any specific point to focus that anger and discontent on. And now what's been happening is that, with particular political leaders saying that it's the fault of, for example, the white man, or of foreigners, not specifically white people, that South Africa is in such a bad place, and that unemployment is so low, and that we have poverty and all of these things. Now all of this feeling of anger and discontent is starting to get a focus. So a lot of the comments that I've been seeing online and discussions is very much focused towards, if only white people would leave South Africa, then everything would be fine. Some of the comments are, if only non-South African indigenous people would leave South Africa, then everything would be great. So there are a lot of Indians living in South Africa. There are a lot of other African country, or people from other African countries living in South Africa. So I know that one of the political leaders at the moment, sorry, excuse the noise in the background, one of the political leaders is actually pushing the point of only South African born and bred people whose ancestry traces back to South Africa should be here. So along with all of these things that have been happening and this anger and discontent that's coming to surface as hateful comments and racist remarks and things like that, we have a government and a national leadership that is currently focusing on land expropriation as being the solution. And while they're punting this big ideal, there's a lot of little things happening in the background unnoticed. A lot of little laws that are being passed, a lot of restrictions on freedom kind of type laws. But also, while they're doing all of this, they're not focusing on actually developing real solutions. The government, at least as far as I've seen, has not actually been promoting ways that we can focus on really changing the issues that we're facing. Because, as I've said in one of my previous videos, land expropriation without compensation, and even every non-South African person leaving, is not going to change the problems. It's not going to decrease poverty. It's not going to increase employment. It might increase employment a small amount temporarily, but all of the consequences that would come with such drastic measures are likely to destroy, at least in part, a lot of the industry that has already been built here. Because a lot of foreign countries would stop trading with South Africa if those extreme measures were taken. But in any case, I'm going off topic. My point is that there are a lot of different things that we could be doing and could be using our energy on to find better solutions for the issues, the real everyday issues that we're facing now, compared to just saying that we'll redistribute land. For example, one of the initiatives that is at the moment that the government is trying to put through at the moment is increasing the minimum wage to 21 Rand an hour, which is still not a lot. And while doing that would improve a lot of people's lives a small amount, it wouldn't be enough to have a decent, comfortable life. So that's one of the initiatives where more focus can be put on actually increasing daily life experiences in terms of housing, access to food and healthcare and transport and things like that. Those are practical, tangible things that need to be addressed. The issue of land reform can be approached in different ways. For example, there are constantly productive, profitable properties on the market that, yes, they may cost a lot, but investing in our country's future by buying up those properties, training a group of people who were previously impoverished to run the property from head to toe, empowering them to become self-employed, to become employers, that's something that can make a real difference to a lot of people. I'm not saying that all of these ideas would work in practice. That's at the moment they're just theories. But what I do see needs to change is our focus from all of the problems that we're facing to How can we solve the problems that we're facing? What can we practically do? And maybe even consider, how can we start creating change without worrying so much about what it's going to cost? Because what is money in comparison to a good quality life? In comparison to a mother losing her child because of inadequate medical care? Money is nothing if we really look at the bigger picture, if we really look at what's important in life. Let's give each other a better life and put aside the petty obsession we have with how much everything is going to cost, and say, rather, are we willing to live with the cost of not making these changes, the price we would pay then, the price that so many people would pay for not doing everything we can to create a better world. So this is my appeal to the leaders in South Africa, is focus on solutions, focus on how we can practically and tangibly create better lives for those people who are unable to create it for themselves, and who are now so angry and have had enough of being powerless. Now they're, instead of being given practical solutions, they don't have anything else but feeling anger and taking that anger out on whatever is around them, or whatever is given focus for that anger. So that's my little update for the moment. If you have any questions, if you would like to be part of the discussion, if you have any constructive points to add to this, please do. I will not be approving comments along the lines of get out of SA, you white person, and so on and so forth, in varying degrees of violence. So, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.